Ja Morant is one of my favorite players not only in the game today, but also one of my favorite players ever. He's a bit of a throwback to the explosive primary guards that I grew up watching, like Russell Westbrook and John Wall when he was in Washington. And his game really stands out compared to his peers at the point guard position in a league that puts such an emphasis and focus on perimeter scoring. Ja is unique in the sense that he really doesn't make perimeter scoring the focal point of his game. However, despite that fact, he is also one of the best players in the NBA. In many ways, he's just as, if not more impactful as he is exciting to watch, which really says something because he's one of the most exciting players in the NBA. Ja Morant is the poster child for one of my biggest beliefs about modern NBA basketball, despite the fact that his game isn't like most modern point guards. In this video, I want to talk about how good Ja is, as well as why he represents modern NBA basketball more than you probably think he does. But before we go any further, if you're new and like basketball, I'd really appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to notify whenever I release a video. If you enjoy basketball, I really think you're going to enjoy my content, and doing all those things are the best way to let me and YouTube know that you enjoy my content so I can make more of it for you guys in the future. Anyways, let's talk about Ja Morant. Through 5 games, Ja Morant is averaging 20.4 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 9.4 assists per game on 45.2, 21.7, 83.8 splits and a 58 true shooting percentage. While the scoring numbers don't stand out the most, especially for a guy who averages close to 27 points per game over his last 3 seasons, that speaks more to the fact that he's only averaging 27 minutes per game so far, rather than anything about his ability. Per 75 possessions, he's averaging 25.9 points per game, 6.4 rebounds per game, and 11.9 assists per game. Now, I don't know if he's going to average close to 12 assists per game when he's fully ramped up and needs to play the minutes that he has for most of his career. However, given what we have seen now and in prior seasons, I do think he's going to average around 25 to 27 points per game, 5 to 6 rebounds per game, and maybe 10 to 11 assists per game. And even then, 20 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 9 assists per game is still an elite point guard season. The fact that on the surface the scoring numbers look down really speaks to how special Ja Morant is. When we are talking about a player having to quote-unquote ramp up and get back into it coming off an injury, and he's still putting up all-star point guard numbers compared to MVP point guard numbers that we've seen in the prior seasons, that does show the level of player we are talking about here. Ja is one of the best rim pressure threats in the NBA. In fact, in terms of pure rim scoring ability, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the only player that I think among point guards that is better in that regard. This season, he's shooting 70% at the rim on 4 attempts per game, 5.1 per 75 possessions. Now, I do think that his efficiency will go down as he starts to take more attempts as the season goes along. 70% at the rim is impressive for a traditional drop big that's playing off a point guard, and for a point guard that's unheard of, let alone a 175-pound point guard. However, Ja Morant has proven to be an elite rim pressure threat prior to this season. He was in the 99th percentile in terms of rim volume his last 2 seasons, where he played at least 55 games. Both seasons he was all-star to all-NBA level good. And he was in the 98th percentile in rim volume during the 9 games he played last season. In fact, in 2022, at 22 years old, among point guards who took at least 6 attempts per game at the rim, he was the most efficient one in the NBA, while taking 9.1 attempts per game, while second place was at 7.7 attempts per game. On top of that, he's also elite at drawing fouls. In his 2 most recent All-Star seasons, in the 9 games he played last season, he's in the 98th percentile in free throw attempts. And this season, he's averaging 7.4 free throw attempts per game, which puts him in the 94th percentile, but per 75 possessions, he's averaging 9.4 attempts per game at the line, which is in the 97th percentile. So it's clear just based off the numbers, Ja is one of the best rim presser guards in the NBA. But how does that translate to the tape? The obvious place to start is his athleticism. Ja is one of the best athletes in the NBA, but it's not just about how high he jumps. Yes, that's a real factor in it. Explosiveness as a leaper is a real thing for his game. He's one of the best in the NBA at it, and that is something that makes him special, but he's so much more than that. He's one of the fastest players in the NBA, with and without the basketball in his hands. His burst and quickness give him a nearly impossible first step to contain 1v1. His vertical range and hang time are just as, if not more impressive than his explosive vertical leaping ability. His body control and flexibility allow him to find angles that others can't defend without fouling, which combined with his explosiveness, speed, and quickness allows him to do things a majority of NBA players couldn't even dream of. But what truly makes him special as an athlete is his deceptive strength. He's not the biggest guy in the world, 6'3", 175 pounds. 175 pounds is pretty light for a point guard, let alone a point guard that consistently is in the 98th percentile in rim volume. But Ja is what can be described as skinny tough, which is a term that one of the best draft analysts in the game, Rafael Barlow, used to describe Brandon Ingram when he was coming out of Duke, as well as other great prospects like Chet Holmgren when he was coming out of Gonzaga. What this means is a player that isn't afraid of contact despite the physical disadvantage, and given how much Ja attacks the rim, he fits that description perfectly. He's fearless attacking the basket, he never hesitates on a drive, which is something that we see other guards tend to struggle with. That isn't a problem for him. Now that can be to his detriment at times, but his numbers and impact suggest that he's doing something that's positive for the most part. He absorbs contact very well, and not only can handle contact, but he can also play through contact. His frame does somewhat give him an advantage. It's easy to draw fouls, the same way it is for Trae Young and say Gilgeous-Alexander. A thinner frame means you're just more susceptible to contact, but it also takes technique and skill to draw fouls. You can't just run into a wall and expect to get a call, despite what the popular belief among NBA fans is. And honestly, compared to other players, I do think Ja Morant draws a lot of legit contact. He tries to finish more than not instead of just hunting for fouls. And when you combine that with his rim presser ability in terms of the in-between game, he has a really developing floater that I'm really encouraged by this season in particular. And you look at that inside the arc package, combined with the rest of his game, it's truly easy to see how special of a talent he is. Ja is one of the best playmakers in the NBA. He checks off every box you look for in an elite playmaker. His vision's off the charts, his feel for the game and understanding of his scoring gravity is incredible. His scoring gravity as a player can maximize his value as a playmaker. He's creative as a passer, knows how to manipulate defenses with his eyes and movements on pass and shot fakes. His handle is among the best in the NBA. He rarely picks up his dribble, and it allows him to fully utilize his playmaking ability. But what makes Ja stand out amongst his peers as a playmaker is his processing speed. I can probably count on one hand the amount of players that process the game at speeds Ja does. His ability to read the floor and make decisions while playing at the speed he does is truly special. It reminds me of those, not older, but probably actually older than I'm willing to admit, point guards when they were in their prime, like Russell Westbrook and John Wall, in terms of that speed and the ability to make plays at that speed. It's truly something that, at least in today's NBA, only he does among the top tier point guards, because really only he has that combination of athleticism and playmaking intangibles, again, among those top tier point guards. I think the closest point guard that I would consider a top tier one that does something somewhat similar is De'Aaron Fox, and even then, I don't think Fox is on the level of Ja as a playmaker, and that's no disrespect to De'Aaron Fox. He's one of the best point guards in the NBA, and he's far from what I would describe as a bad playmaker. However, I think that just speaks to how highly I view Ja Morant's ability as a playmaker. The only other two I can think of that I believe have the potential to do something similar to what Ja does as a playmaker are Scoot Henderson and Amen Thompson. And both of those guys have a long ways to go in their development in a lot of areas of their game. And I don't think it's a guarantee either of them reach that level, even if I think both of them have unreal playmaking upside. Ja finds angles that only he has the athleticism to exploit. Ja makes reads that he sees before anyone else can because he's that far ahead of the play. He's one of the best transition playmakers I've ever seen because defenses have so much to worry about. First of all, he's one of the fastest players in the league with the basketball in his hands, which makes him a coast-to-coast threat. Second of all, he's an elite playmaker that will find open shooters, cutters, and rim runners when defenses try to stop him from scoring in transition. And there's just a controlled chaos to his playmaking. He thrives in it, yet he's also controlled in it even when it doesn't look like he is on the surface. What he does may look reckless, but he's in complete control more times than not, and nobody knows that better than he does, because most of the time he's the one creating that chaos to thrive in. In my opinion, the biggest indicator for an elite playmaker is their understanding of what makes them valuable as a scorer and passer and how they fully utilize that to their advantage. Ja Morant is one of the players that I think has shown he has a complete understanding of what he is as a scorer and passer and knows how to fully maximize that in the NBA. And he's shown that even prior to the NBA at Murray State, and it's why he's proven to be one of the best playmakers in the NBA. I think Ja Morant is a player that people kind of just forgot about because he barely played last season for one reason or another, on top of the emergence of other young guards in the league. Now, we can talk about the reasons he didn't play almost all of last season, but I'm not going to in this video. That's not what this video is about, but I will just say that there are players who have done a lot worse than what he's done and have not been punished at all. But that's besides the point. He is still an incredible player and somebody that I think you could build a contender around because he fits what you want in an offensive engine. Sure, he may not be the shooter that other elite guards are, and yes, shooting is incredibly valuable in the modern NBA, but when it comes to being a main option on a team, what's most valuable isn't the ability to score from the perimeter, in my opinion. It's still valuable, don't get me wrong. I don't think you can be a non-factor, and while I don't think Ja is a good shooter from beyond the arc, I don't think he's a non-factor either. He will punish you from time to time when you go under the screen. But regardless, in my opinion, the two most valuable things a main option on a potential contender needs are playmaking and rim pressure, which Ja Morant is among the best in the NBA at. The fact he averages 27, 7, and 9 in his playoff career is proof of that. Defenses get more physical in the playoffs, and you just can't rely on only taking a bunch of threes, because contrary to popular belief, the Celtics didn't just jack up a bunch of threes on their way to a title. It was that combined with how much pressure Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were able to put on the rim, and when Boston was at its best, it was because the top two options on their team were aggressive attacking the basket, and on top of that, the fact that both of them were way better playmakers during that playoff run than they were in prior playoff runs is another big reason why they won that title. In fact, I could say the same thing about the other team that made the finals. I think Dallas was at its best when Luka was attacking the basket because he's so big, so skilled, and so physical around the rim that it's really hard to stop. He's either going to get the foul or he's going to score. And looking at this season, I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are a legit contender, a top 2 team in the NBA, because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander puts a ton of pressure on the rim. Perimeter offense is incredibly valuable. I'm not trying to say it isn't, but rim pressure will always be the most valuable factor for a main option. And I don't think that's ever going to change, because the fact that shots at the rim will always be the most efficient shot is something that never is going to not be the case. And having a player like Ja Morant can fully unlock a team because he puts a ton of pressure on the rim, but he also has the playmaking to capitalize on the easy looks he creates because of his gravity attacking the basket due to defenses having to focus on him. I think that Ja Morant is one of the 10 to 12 best players in the NBA. I think if I were to make a list right now, I would probably have him in the top 10. I'd have to think about it, but just off the top of my head, he is one in my opinion. He's somebody that's been an MVP caliber player when he's healthy. He's somebody that I think you can build a contender around based off what I believe is the most valuable aspects of being a main option. And I think people sometimes forget that he's still young. He's only 25 years old. To put it into perspective, in terms of league experience, he's only 1 year more experienced in the league than guys like Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, LaMelo Ball, and Tyrese Maxey. And he's not that much older than them either. He's only 2 years older than LaMelo and Ant, and he's only about a year older than guys like Halliburton and Maxey. So this is still a guy that can get better, and he's already great. Ja Morant is truly a special talent. One of my biggest beliefs when it comes to elite NBA players is that they have to have things you just can't teach, and Ja Morant has so many things you just can't teach. You can't teach his athleticism, his ability to handle physicality at his size. You can't teach his playmaking feel and processing speed. You can't teach his aggressive wiring as a player. And when it comes to the two most important aspects that I believe make a primary option on a potential contender, he's elite at both of them. To me, he's the closest thing to Allen Iverson in terms of similar size. Now, he's taller than Iverson, but the frame is similar. Iverson was around 150 to 160 pounds at 5'11", 6 foot. Ja is 6'3", 170 to 175. They're both elite athletes and both handle contact way better than their frames suggest they should. Now, when you add what Ja does at the rim with elite playmaking tools and intangibles, you get a monster player. Is Ja Morant the shooter that other elite guards are? No, he isn't. But that doesn't change the fact he's one of the best players in the NBA. The fact that he's not some sniper from behind the line hasn't been a hindrance to his game. The fact that he averages close to 27 points per game over his last 2 seasons where he plays at least 55 games is a testament to that. Also, the fact that during those 2 seasons he played at least 55 games, both of them, the Grizzlies won at least 51 games and were a top 2 seed in both of those seasons, while having a top 15 offense in the league in both seasons, with one of those seasons being a top 5 offense. And then compare it to 2024, where Ja barely played. They won just 27 games and had the worst offense in the NBA. I think that speaks to how valuable Ja Morant is as a player. That to me is a superstar impact. And while he's not the only good player on that team, Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are both among the best players at their position in the NBA. It's clear not only look at the numbers, but also the tape and seeing who truly is the most valuable player on the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis is a playoff team because of Ja. They go as far as he can take them, and I think if they're healthy, they have a chance to really make a deep run this year. Of course, health has always been a question with that team, including John Morant, but the talent is clearly there because they have what I believe is a true superstar in John Morant. And looking at the pace he's on in his career, I think it's very likely by the time his career ends, it will be with the speeds in Springfield while wearing a gold jacket. But that's the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, I'm notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball, and I think if you enjoy basketball, you're going to enjoy my content, and doing all those things are the best way to let me know and YouTube know that you enjoy my content, so I can make more of it for you guys in the future. Let me know what you think about John Morant. Where does he rank in the NBA for you? How good do you think Memphis can be this season? Who are some point guards that you think are better? Who are some point guards that you think he's better than? Love to all of that in the comment section below. But with that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.